And great. We're on, we're being heard, there's no distortion, we're recording, and so excellent. So welcome to Silver Tent TV, and welcome to the second discussion in our The Profound Power of Women Over 50 conversations. And yes, it's almost, I think it's around 6 weeks since we did the very first show that relaunched Silver Tent TV. That was on something like the 19th of June, I think. And that was a really fascinating conversation. And we talked a lot about how we felt about being over 50, 60, 70 and beyond. What kind of power did we feel individually that we'd grown into? And there were some really wonderful facets of that. And what I wanted to do today is take that a step further. And, you know, my whole thing, and one of the main reasons that I actually set up the Silver Tent itself almost 7 years ago was this idea that we're not only wild, wonderful and wise elder women, but that we have wisdom worth sharing, that we're valid and valuable in our world today. But what I've really come to get to feel and believe very strongly is that we're far more than valid and valuable, that we're actually vital in our world today. And even though I get this idea that our demographic, women over 50, 60, 70 and beyond, are kind of beginning to go downhill. We can't have children anymore, that we're kind of past our sell-by date, and that we will just go downhill, will become a burden either on our families or the state, and then at some point we'll die. And it's like, great. Is that all there is to look forward to, you know, when we get beyond 50, 60, 70 and beyond? And one of the amazing things for anybody of you who is watching and you're not in the Silver Tent community on Facebook, then you might not know what that feels like to be even online in a community of vibrant, opinionated, powerful, and sometimes quiet women over 50. And it is honestly, the energy and the vibrancy is something else. And the childlike quality, the joy and the silliness and the mischievous energy that gets radiated by a lot of us women over 50 is like, you might not expect it. So one of my passions is to let women who haven't got to 50 yet, and maybe are only in their 20s and 30s, get the impression that it's not the end of the world when you get to 50 or 60 or 70 or 80, that actually this might well be the main meal, as Jeanette Kishore-McKenzie calls it. So I'm really interested to see what kind of answers we're going to get from the two questions that I want to mainly pose today, which is, what is the value? And, you know, what is the value? What is the wisdom that we as individuals bring to the world? What do we each think that we have to offer? I mean, there'll be like a smorgasbord, but like just to choose one or two main things. And what do we as a demographic, as a group of women over 50, 60 and beyond, what do we bring to the world? So who would love to start with either of those questions? Oh, I got Vanessa just really, I'm going to go to Mary. She put her hand up. And the Vanessa, I could see it bubbling away there. But Mary, I'd love to hand over to you.
I get in first. I might have some more thoughts to share later, of course. The first thing from what you were saying just now, I mean, I know you said for anybody, you know, all of us, of the whole community of women over 50, but actually the Silver Tent for me has really highlighted how special everybody is at our age and beyond, because it is a place for people to see exactly what can be achieved, and you know what we offer, and the joy we have in life in all these years in different ways. You know, I love, I've said this before, but I love the fact that my younger friends are really looking forward to being 50. so they could join the silver tent, because who would have thought, just a few years ago, even now in the media that you read, that women would look forward to their silver years of being 50 and all that we think that might bring, as you just described, Francesca. So I just love that, and it's just made us more visible and more powerful as a community. I think whether people are aware that we belong to a specific thing called the silver tent or not, the fact that this is on Silver Tent TV and it's spread out anywhere that people can access it from at any age, etc., it's it's really, really powerful. I love being a part of that.
Fantastic. I love the way that you've described that, and that's so true, isn't it? I think us having the opportunity to connect with so many women over 50, 60, etc., and seeing the vibrancy is just phenomenal. And so Mary, can I put you on the spot and ask you what you feel you personally bring as a wise, dare I call you, elder woman?
Yes, you dare. That's perfectly fine. I'm happy with that now. Thanks partly to the Silver Tent. It's an interesting question, because sometimes I don't recognize what I bring, and I know I've all sorts of offerings and books and all sorts of things that I've brought before. But the example really is this morning I was on a women's networking event with women of all ages, mostly much younger than me. And we were just literally doing a short introduction to what we do. And I use something about the words I often use about offering a quiet, safe space for people to hear themselves think. And one of the younger women there, she said, "Oh, I'm feeling really emotional now." And I said a few other things, but that was the main gist of it. So I'm feeling really emotional now. That's really touched my heart. That's not usually words you hear on business networking. This is a particularly, it's a women's one, so it is particularly beautiful and connecting, which is why I always go to those. It's the Federation of Small Businesses, which is a great organisation here in the UK, and it's it's something that supports people across the country. And I love that they have these women's groups, because they're very, very special. But it just really touched me in a way. And she said I'd touched her heart, but she touched mine too in saying that was something that somebody received what I said in that way, in that a few seconds of introduction to what I do. That's really just an example, I think.
That you create these gorgeous, quiet spaces. Yes. And very validating spaces too, aren't they? I love the spaces that you create, Mary. That's great. Thank you. Yes, who else would like to answer that particular question? What do you personally bring to the world?
Here I am bubbling away. Yeah, as I see it, it really is part of the bigger picture. And I personally feel my expression of everything we need is already inside us. So we just have to open up take the cap off the well and allow it all to just bubble up. And also that there are no mistakes and there's no right or wrong, which is such a relief to have distilled that and know that, and to talk about that with those of all ages around us, especially the young ones who are still very much trapped in the idea that there might be right and wrong or good and bad. So I really feel strongly in terms of allowing the power, because I see it like a power surge, that we allow that to flow through us effortlessly, allowing all those words, and no strategy, no pushing, just do it, just allow it. And that's what's such fun with my playmates in Silver Synergy and the Silver Tent, is literally just going with the flow and allowing this amazing synergy indeed of women over 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 and whatever. I don't think we've got anyone up to 90 yet, have we?
I don't think so. I think we're coming close.
Yeah, we're getting close. Not quite. But anyway, they're all the numbers are just numbers, and they're all going backwards anyway, I think. And the point is to allow this power and allow it to flow. And I feel it like the ripple effect. Like if we can, each of us, be a ripple effect and have our little input, it will ripple out throughout the whole of society, the whole of whoever. And I really, that's where I feel I don't stop at whatever I say and to whoever I say it. I'm not standing on my soapbox and banging it up and down. I am allowing, with a very different energy, not of strategy and not shouty, just doing it and going with the flow, and very much envisaging that ripple effect going out. So that's me.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Who else would like to share? Yes, Conchetta.
When you asked that question, the first thing that popped in my mind is been there, done that, got the t-shirt and survived. So for me, part of it is that's what we represent, is that when I just here, just the women that are here, if we just begin to talk about our lives in general, from what we've been through or are going through, I think that's something we bring. It's a wisdom. I call it a wisdom, but it's just life. It's what we've lived. And for the most part, have come to this place, a little bit of what you were saying, Vanessa's allowing, and also that's what has been surprising me in the last couple of years is I'm less ruffled. You know, something will come to me. I can give you an example of this weekend. We were, I had my suitcase and my backpack, and we were in Bordeaux having lunch, and we were going to take, they have a boat taxi to take you back up where we had parked. Well, we got in line, we stood in line for a while to get on, and we got right up to get on the boat, and it was full. Now, I can tell you, probably 3 or 4 years ago, I would have had a temper tantrum and just been yelling, not at anybody in particular, but really just, how could this happen to us? And da 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 da. And then I just stood there for a moment, and I even had to, it was as if I was witnessing myself, and went, meh, it's not raining. We can get on the tram. We can go get the bus, which will take us back up along the river. It'll be just as lovely. And we'll get to the car and we'll go home. And I thought, who am I? In that moment, I went, what? And I just realized that that's it. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt and survived, and realized that I didn't gain anything by getting upset. I'm not saying that I could have gotten upset. I had I will say the perfect right if it really ruffled my feathers, but that's kind of a little example of what so in some ways we can model that sense of, hey, whoo, it's not that serious. I mean, we're not talking major stuff here. We just have to get, and it's okay. And by the way, you can walk, and all kinds of things, of just this sense of perhaps not taking one so seriously. And if I could say some of what I think I bring also is this sense of humor, because I tend to be very serious, and I know that about myself, and have learned the importance of taking a look at life with a different perspective and laughing a little bit, or even a lot whenever you need it. And I think that's part of what I bring, is that perspective. And I think based on the life that I've lived since I've been 50, my other phrase is never say never. Just never say never. The most amazing things can arrive. So
that's so encouraging, Conchetta, isn't it? That amazing things can happen at every age.
Exactly, and in every moment.
Yeah. Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you. Debra, would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. So what wisdom do I bring to the world? Well, you know, I've had a lot of life experiences in terms of, you know, going through breakups in relationships and being able to do that consciously, and coming out of this victim mindset into knowing that I'm a powerful creator of my own reality. So when people are going through, you know, those challenging times, no matter what it is, I can always help them by putting a spin on what they're experiencing and helping them to see that life isn't happening to them, that they're actually creating it, and how they can find an empowering meaning in whatever happens to them to get them through that time. So it's helping people to move from feeling in victim mindset to being a creator, and helping them to raise a vibration. You know, I just love helping people to live a high vibe, joyful life with fun.
That's great, isn't it? That's just really great.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. And that whole understanding of all the trials and tribulations that life can throw at us, to be able to get a different spin on that from somebody who's, like Conchetta was saying, survived those, you know, we're still here.
Yeah.
No matter what, we are definitely still here. And
it's one of the reasons why I share my stories so often. You know, I've got lots of different stories that I can delve into in order to pull out a relevant one that's going to help in that moment. And the other thing that I'm passionate about is helping people understand the power of plants as medicines, like herbs, essential oils, plant medicines are all around us. You know, dandelions, you can eat all parts of the plant and use it. And so helping people to realize that rather than just being reliant on big pharma, there's so much that they can do for themselves and to empower themselves to get the diagnosis from the doctors. You know, you need to do that, but then look at what can they do for themselves in terms of getting to the root cause. And instead of just putting a band-aid on the symptoms, looking at what's causing the original thing, and looking at what they can do in terms of diet and nutrition.
That's such a great thing to offer, isn't it? That sense, that understanding that we don't have to be reliant on some of those huge organizations, that actually we can access things ourselves.
Yeah, and there is a place for it, but you know, there's alternatives as well that people can look into. Yeah,
brilliant. That's beautiful. Thank you, Debra. And Charlemagne, it's very early in the morning for you, isn't it?
Terribly, you know, it's definitely morning here. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, and I would echo quite a bit of what's been said regarding, at this stage of my life, feeling into what I bring and feeling into what we as a group bring. I think there's a lot to say about having taken an alternate path, having maybe not trod the tried and true or the paths of our parents, or for me, looking at my mother line and the other women in my family, and knowing when I was small, and the messaging that's been consistent, that I didn't want to do that. I felt fairly sure that my path did not involve me necessarily having children, or not necessarily having a lot of traditional things that people think about. And I really appreciate looking back and being able to share with my younger women friends, and my contemporaries too, who are maybe right now at the crossroads of decision-making and feel, what could they possibly do in the security of a traditional life of marriage and children and a certain type of home and a certain type of community or spirituality, whatever it is, or a certain type of job. I've broken free from all of those. And the thing about personal transformational work, and as a personally evolving human being who provides services, healing modalities, and in particular, the idea that we're constantly at a place where transformation is possible, and that if we can envision it, we can become well-resourced. And part of being well-resourced is coming home to ourselves and really hearing the healed heart's call to life. That's so important. And then I think that sometimes it's very hard to hear it because there's so much other powerful messaging or powerful experiences that we've come to really love, that maybe have held us very well for a period of time, but then somehow we discover it's not a good fit anymore, and that there's more alive inside of us that wants to be expressed and explored. And do we risk security? Do we risk taking a chance? Do we risk being different? And if we grew up in families that maybe were more conservative, or maybe where that was frowned upon, or even in a part of our culture or society where women are told to get in line and stay in line, that's not necessarily something we've seen well modeled or seen go well.
That's brilliant, Charlemagne. Thank you. And you know, it reminds me so much of, 30 years ago, whenever it was, and I had a fairly mainstream business that was doing quite well at the time. But I just hated it. Hated it with a vengeance after a while. You know, it had been brilliant for the first 3 or 4 years, and then I just felt too trapped and tied up, and yeah, it was time to get out. And I remember talking to some friends, and I don't know them terribly well, and they were asking me about the kind of work that I did, and I said, oh well, I've got this business, but I'm going to leave that. And they said, is it not doing very well? So I said, no, it is actually doing quite well. So they said, so why are you going to leave? And I said, because I don't want to do it anymore. And they said, but it's doing well. I said, yes, but I don't want to do it anymore. And they could not understand that, because as far as they were concerned, the doing well was the important bit, and whether I liked it or not was irrelevant. So it's like, it was as if they couldn't get that if it was doing well, I would have, how come I didn't like it? Like, surely I must have done, because it was doing well. And it was so fascinating to realize. I thought it was a completely ordinary, normal thing to say. Like, I've had enough of doing that. I want to sell that business and then find out what inspires me next. But that sense of that, I've got a business doing well, and it's kind of secure right now, therefore I ought to like it come what may, no matter what my heart is screaming at. And there was no more growth. There was nothing else to be learned from that. I think that's something that once something becomes too easy, I
think there's, I was going to say, and I think there's also this idea, what I've run into on numerous occasions was, well, isn't it a little too late? I'm like, isn't it a little too late? It's never too late. Not at all. If we have a vision, we have imagination, we can make connections, we can write a new script. That's part of the beauty of being women. We learn that our life is cyclical from the time we're young, right? Our body cycles. So why wouldn't our lives? It's a life cycle. There's all these beautiful ways that we can step into change that are different. And I think there's a part of it where it's growing the courage, but I think you make a very good point where I think it's too easy. And again, there's so much support for staying in a space that looks a certain way because society promotes it. And to say, I no longer feel happy, I no longer want to do this thing, where so much of the messaging I got is, well, life isn't just about being happy. I'm like, yeah, I get that, but it's much better. It's far more fulfilling if I am happy. And maybe happy isn't quite the right word, but there's a feeling of wholeness. And when I feel that my soul is being crushed by the limitations of the box that I have myself happily walked into because of the nature of the work, or a decision I made about a marriage, or any number of things that are choices that we make that we can make anew. It's like negotiating a contract with life. Once this contract is no longer serving the greater good, and I'm part of the greater good, I can't serve as well my people, the people that I work with, if I'm not in a good place. I think it's true. We can't serve our families, our communities, our loved ones, our clients, if we're not in a place of that heart song happiness.
What a fantastic message, a bit of like wisdom that it's never too late. It is never too late. Like that's just, you know, I'm taking that on. And I can't quite believe that in 2 years' time I'm going to be 70. Like I don't know how that happened. I'm sure that you all agree with me, that weirdness of suddenly discovering that the numbers that are associated with you are, how did they get there? But it's like, it's really encouraging for me to hear that, Charlemagne, too, that it's never too late, that I can come up with a dream at 75 in 7 years' time, and there is really nothing to stop me dreaming it into existence and allowing that flow of energy. So thank you so very much for that. Yeah, Conchetta.
Well, I wanted to add that with Charlemagne, I have this, it reminded me that we do have models in the silver tent. And you've interviewed lots of models, women models that are doing exactly what you're talking about. And I just had this flash of, and again, I play around with words. So for me, I love the idea that we can unchoose something. I know it's a matter of semantics, but the idea of, yes, we can choose something else, but there's something very freeing for me in just going, oh, boop, I unchoose that. I no longer want to check that box. And it's, again, it's just, it's really a symbol of, because a lot of times I have this impression, I put this pressure on, I must leap. Well, if we look at my astrology, I'm a double Taurus with barely any Gemini. I have so much earth in me. Leaping takes a lot of effort for me, even if I moved across the ocean and you know, changed my life at 50. Still, this is great. I love this. Thank you for that. This sort of beak. I had an epiphany. Unchoose. I no longer choose to do that. So that probably is another one of our strengths that we offer, is the ability to unchoose. Is it there's something that, and I think it was Sunday that said yesterday, we were on your interviewing her, she said that menopause is a time of letting go of things. And that's exactly how I could see it. I do see it, is that I unchose so many things and continue to unchoose them. Largely because I want, my word for happy is satisfied. I want that inside of me. I want that feeling that says wholeness for me. And so, cool. I just had a revelation. I like this.
That's great. That's great. And I was also thinking about, you know, the sense of how we were brought up. And I was brought up very much to not be submissive exactly, because it's not, my mum wasn't submissive, but to, how to describe it? I think to be gentle. I think it was always that let your dad rest. Don't bother your dad. Don't give him a hard time. You know, that kind of thing. It's like you can still, she could still have her own ideas and yet mold herself kind of around the masculine. And I know that I grew up and spent a lot of my life not being remotely direct, being very Libran and gentle with people and not wanting to be pushy or ask for what I want clearly. And I was just asking myself this morning about, do I think I'm still like that? And it's like, oh, no. And I don't know how much is the post-menopausal sort of knock-on effect of just saying things like they are. And I don't do that all the time. I'm not completely outspoken, but I'm far more outspoken than I used to be. But I think one of the biggest things for me has been being in this community with women over 50, 60, who have kind of demanded that I am more direct. And it's so much easier now for me to say no, equally yes, I don't agree. You know, those things that I found so hard to say from my heart when I was younger than that. And I think that that's something really wonderful to model out in the world, is to say no or yes. And I wondered how you feel. Do any of you feel that you've changed from the way that you were brought up, having become post-menopausal? Have you changed the way that you express yourself in the world?
Yeah, I definitely have. You know, I was brought up to fear, you know, you do as I say, not as I do. And if you don't do what we say, you get a belt type of thing, you know. But and also I wasn't very assertive. But now it's like, you know, anybody anybody tries to not cross me, but I'm not afraid of speaking my truth and saying no. One of the hardest things I learned to do was say no. And I learned that when I was in my 40s, because I was a people pleaser, checking on everybody's stuff, and anybody who asked me for help, I would do it at my own expense, you know, in terms of energy and time and things like that. I'm putting myself last. But now it's like, no, I know what my boundaries are, which I didn't know back then. So that's been a real blessing.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. I can't imagine you any other way, Deborah. That's really interesting, isn't it? When you meet somebody and they're already like this, it's like meeting somebody who's a non-smoker, never having known them as a smoker. And it's the same with that. I can't imagine you being that kind of people-pleasing, holding back kind of person. What about anybody else? Do you feel that you've changed? Yeah, Vanessa.
I know that in the past, I got myself into a proper Libran situation of doing everything for everybody and being the hub of a big family and loving it. And until I woke up at 2 a.m. one morning and I thought, is this all there is to life? And of course, it completely coincided with the menopause. And this absolute shift of knowing that it's my time. And I have to use that drive, that, as I said, that wellspring coming up of power, and absolutely turn my life upside down. And I wouldn't say I'd always been noisy and saying my stuff when I needed to, or when it was appropriate. But the difference is very much, and I do remember I benefited very much from having an older sister, 25 years older than me, Chris, who was in the silver tent, and she was such a role model of, they used to call her Flamingo Chris, all our great nieces and nephews, because she was just so zany and doing stuff her own way. So for me, it was a no-brainer, just being able to follow and knowing that's why I had such a head start in being able to do so much exploration and knowing so much of the stuff that people start to explore at midlife. I'd already had like a leg up in that. And starting to do so much more self-inquiry and knowing that it really is my time and it's our time. And that is what is still my number one drive is community. And that's where I know that that the power of community, having all my life lived in community, and knowing now loving playing with the silver tent and silver synergy community, and knowing that actual energy of where we meet, that the sum of the parts is always greater than the individual.
Yeah.
And that's where I am still, and that it's a complete driving force. So
I get such this
time.
Yes, I'm getting this brilliant sense of our strength in numbers for a start. I mean, all of us have got our own individual strength, but I can just imagine if we were all together, we were linking arms against, linking, these kinds of arms, and kind of this sense of freedom just to be who we want to be. And then I'm quite sure that we could move mountains, if we pour our energy and our focus together. I do think that we're a kind of unstoppable creature, many-headed Hydra creature, and I don't know, I think that alone is something. It's like if we can show others the intrinsic power that we have as individuals and as a community of women over 50. And I don't mean specifically in the silver tent, but generally, it's like, wow, what is there that we might not be able to do? Is there anything that we might not be able to do?
If we can imagine it, we can. That's it. It's a done deal.
Wow, fantastic. So I'm just thinking, like, what is going on in the world today that we might, if we wanted to, so it would have to be like a personal thing to anybody here that wants to share. What would you want to be instrumental in changing in our world today? Oh, I didn't know that was going to come out. No, I'd like to answer that one. Yeah, Charlemagne.
I'll happily step into that because it's a thing I think about a lot. Having come from a very conservative, constricting, growing up, that I think that there's a couple of things regarding women really finding their voice. And you used a word, there's another word that came to me when we're talking about it. Happiness is too small of a word. I think there's something about fulfillment, right? I feel fulfilled in my work. I feel fulfilled in my life. My walk through my world is rewarding, partially due to who I am and what I do, but also, like you were saying, Vanessa, the community that I bring around me and that I wish to be in. But I think at the same time, the thing I really want to change, to really go at your question, I believe, and this is as an astrologer, but also as a meditation teacher and a yoga teacher and a healing arts person, is the idea of restfulness. That there's a place in which the hustle culture that's so predominant right now is telling people they need to, or they're not successful. If you don't have a huge business, if you don't have an Instagram or a Facebook following or whatever it is, if you're not kind of go all the time, then you're not successful. And I think there's a way to model actually a very fulfilled, restful life that's not quiet or slow, or, there's these ideas, these adjectives get thrown out. If you're not doing the busy thing, then you can't possibly be maximizing who you are and what you have to offer. And I really want to stand here and say, I believe the exact opposite is true. When I am well-resourced and I am bringing my well-rested medicine of that message of wholeness to the world, I invite others to also look at what is exhausting to them, because I think that's part of where we realize what's no longer working. But until we look at the things we've bought into, consciously or unconsciously, we can't see it. And so as a kid who was very loud, really a rebel, boisterous, and was always told to quiet down, always told to zip it up, that for me, part of being older is being like, yeah, I don't think so. I have earned my right to be completely unapologetically myself, and to realize that there's no limit on what that is, and that I can still be doing the things that are fulfilling, learning more about what that might be, growing myself, and doing it from a place that's very well rooted in the ground of my being, well resourced, and able to let things flow in and flow out, and not necessarily grab things because I'm afraid there'll be no other opportunities, or I'm afraid it doesn't look like the successful person who I'm seeing, next to me, or even within this group. We all have so much that's similar, and yet so much that's very, very different. And so I think that that thing about the fulfillment of life from also knowing who we are and not being afraid to simply be that person and recognize that that light. And I love, we were talking about the unchoosing can happen. And when that happens, we're creating spaciousness, right? And not necessarily rushing to fill it up, but allowing ourselves to open into what might be here that hasn't been given voice to, or has never had the space to be explored or grow, or even, take a risk to do different.
So powerful, Charlemagne. Thank you. Who else has something that you can see in the world that you would love to change? Yeah, Debra.
Yeah, I echo what Charlemagne said. For me, it's about being rather than doing, and being that change and working on yourself, and coming out of this mindset that I've always got to do something. Because being that change is, for me, what it's about. And the other thing is about having non-attachment to people, to places, to things. I've been a nomad for 12 years, and I went through that process of letting everything go. I realized that I'd become a prisoner to my possessions. I've been in a big house for like almost 30 years, and you accumulate so much stuff, and letting go of that attachment was huge, but also liberating and freeing. And I felt so much lighter. So, for me, it's not about material stuff. It's about experiences and the juiciness of life, and just being in the present moment of now. So for me, that's what it's about.
I've just got this image of some people watching this, and being the accumulative kinds of people, like getting the car and the house and the holidays and the this and the that, the barbecue and the hot tub, sitting here going, what? Like, I'm spending all these decades accumulating everything, and then you're just going to suggest, well, just let it all go.
Yeah, let it go. It's amazing. Yeah, when you live a nomadic lifestyle like I do, and I run a house and pet sitting business, you can have the benefit of those things. I go and live in other people's homes, and I get paid for doing that, so I can have the hot tubs, I can have the beautiful homes without the need to own anything.
And letting go of that responsibility for having to look after all that actually creates an incredible amount of freedom. When I gave everything up and I realized I was just going from place to place, and I knew that as long as I had 5 bags with me, I had the stuff that I needed. My camera was in one, kind of thing. Like, check, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay, I'm done. I've got everything here. But that sense of just owning what I needed, and having let go of practically everything else, there was a little bit in storage, I found immensely freeing. I had no idea that it would feel like that. It was extraordinary. But the moment that you stay still for any length of time, you start to gather a few more things. But yeah, amazing. Thank you. Anyone else got something that they would love to change in the world? And Mary, we'll get the teams together and we'll do it.
It's just been a thought sort of bubbling up as everybody's been speaking. It's something to do with that thought that as grown-ups you're not supposed to enjoy yourself. So it might be in work or in job. It's a bit like that. Oh, it's doing well, you should be sticking with it even though it's not bringing you satisfaction or fulfillment or happiness. and you know, being frowned at for being silly when you're a grown woman. You know, why are you skipping along the road with your friend arm in arm, giggling, stuff like this. You know, it's something about that beauty and that silliness, and being, you know, allowing that child within all of us to come out and play more often, and that brings so much joy and fun and beauty into the world. And you know, I've always been inspired by the wonderful poem about when I'm old I shall wear purple, but I'm going to practice before I am, by that lovely poet. And it's something to do with that. It's just allowing that joy to bubble up, as you said, Vanessa, about it bubbling up. I always remember the first time I spent a lot of time in Wells in Somerset, the beautiful cathedral town. I've been there several times, and I realised that the famous wells after which it's named actually just bubble up from the ground into the water. It's not actually a well that you would go and look at with a round stone enclosure and a bucket to pull the water up. It actually just bubbles up naturally through the earth, and that just has always been a metaphor for me of how I want to be, in a way. Just allow the joy within to bubble up and spill over. And you know, don't care what anybody else thinks. So whether I'm sitting on the train giggling at a book I'm reading, or you know, pulling at the faces at the little child that's down the carriageway, who doesn't care either if she looks a bit silly, and all those sort of things just bring us so much joy. They may seem like little things, and they bring so much joy in life. And I think that's something we share, you know, in our communities. We remember not to take ourselves so seriously, as you said, Conchetta. I think something about that, and I'm somebody who in the past has tended to do that and take myself far too seriously and not see the fun in life with joy, and get quite cross when people try to point it out to me.
Yeah, I so get that, Mary. I so get that. And what's coming up for me now, and I'm going to check whether there have been any questions sent to me, but what's coming up for me now is the sense of we're kind of talking about the freedom that we've gained. But actually, is there any reason why anyone at any age couldn't experience the things that we're talking about that we are experiencing beyond 50 and 60, etc.? Like if people want freedom, can they do it regardless of what age they're at? Like, can we all have what we love regardless of our age, I guess is the question.
Definitely. You know, I mean, when a lot of people have gap years. When I was 21, I bought a bicycle and cycled around Europe for 12 months, you know, camping and experiencing life on a bicycle and camping in fields. And it was wonderful, you know, and you get that sense of freedom and adventure because nobody is telling you what to do or where to go. And people can do that at any time, and you don't need a lot of money to do it. You don't. It's a misconception. You can manifest as you're going along. You can budget really, really carefully. You can camp on farmers' lands if you ask them. So anybody can do it at any age, and it's all a matter of mindset and what limitations you put on yourself. I find so many people that put their own limitation. Oh, it's all right for you doing that, but I could never do that. I need a base.
And what about the whole concept of having to work hard to get a decent pension and everything that you need in order to be an old person? I hadn't thought about that before till just now. I think that's heaped on. Is that heaped on the young, so that actually they've got that mindset that they've got to work hard in order to make sure that they're okay when they're incapable? Think they're incapable? Been told they're going to be incapable?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think the other thing is that we don't know what's going to happen in the future to the financial markets. You know, like I've had pensions that I couldn't get access to, you know, from companies that I work with, that because I was under pensionable age, I wasn't able to access that. And the management fees of that pension dwindled it. So it was virtually nothing. So the pensions that I should have had, that, you know, were part of my payment from work, you can't get access to, depending on the size of the pot, obviously. So I don't have a pension provision. I manifest as I'm going along, and I live in the present moment of now, and I have a belief that I will always be all right. And as a powerful creator, I know that I will be all right.
That's just a great message to send out there, isn't it? Have fun when you want to, because you're a powerful creator and you'll make what you need when you want it. But wow. I've kind of stepped in and out of that for a long time, but I've always since, I guess, my late 20s wanted that to be true, but never dared quite put it to the test. And I waited until I was, what, I don't know, 58 before I put it to the test. That seems to be working so far. Right, I'm just going to have a quick look. We've got a few more minutes anyway, but let's just see. No messages have come through, so it doesn't look like there are any questions. So let's just open like a complete open forum. There's like, what would anybody love to add? Conchetta, it looks like you're half thinking about.
I am. This is when you were talking, Charlemagne, about resting. I spent pretty much the first 50 years of my life being very yang and very engaged. I was in corporate America. It was during the time when women were breaking the glass ceiling. So there was, and besides the fact I'm just that kind of accomplisher, I do get a great deal of satisfaction from accomplishing. And that's okay. It's just, I burned myself out being very yang until I chose a meditation teacher and began to cultivate the yin side of myself and learned there's something in Hakomi, which is a Hawaiian therapy that talks about the cycle. And first you take action and then you have to rest, because you've got to integrate whatever actions you're taking. And it's a cycle, just as you were talking, Charlemagne, but we know our cycles. And I look at nature. If it was spring, probably all of us be going, yay, all the time. But we know what happens when you over farm. The soil cannot produce. And so, you know, these are some of the other things for me, is that's how I learned that I must take rest. Unfortunately, I burned myself out and there was just no other way around it. Lay down, that's it. There's no getting up. And so through that process, I was able to see, and rest doesn't have to be sleeping. It can simply be looking at nature, or as I think Mary was talking about, reading a book, listening to music. It's just getting, I think that's the other thing when we talk about what do we bring to the world, is this sense of knowing, this internal knowing that this is my pace. And it is one of the things that I'm still playing around with. I'll call it that, because I very much, because of my family, believed that my value was in how much I could do. And that no longer works for me. I unchoose that button. It's somewhere in here. Well, for me, it's a balance. And that to me is one of the other things we can bring, is just this sense of what works for us, what brings us satisfaction is important. And we'll attract people that are like-minded. For me, it is true. It's true when you meditate in a group. You can feel the energy. When we have our meetings, and you can see that it's, we first have to come back here. I'm just reiterating what everyone else has said. We have to come back here, and then we connect out there. So I could go on and on, but I'll be quiet now.
I'm also getting this impression, you know, when Vanessa was talking about, you're talking about your older sister, 25 years your senior, and maybe what would be great is to, like, just if you're in your 20s or 30s or whatever, is maybe look for an older mentor, you know, an older sister mentor. Like, come to the Silver Tent and let's open our doors, and you can have me as a mentor, Vanessa or Mary, Charlemagne, Debra, Conchetta, or any of the others. And, you know, that, I think there's a really lovely idea of having that balance, you know, of being around, well, I mean, my focus is women over 50, of course. And I think there's just something amazing about us. Just really do. And that never diminishes since that came up as an epiphany, you know, whatever year it was, I can't remember now. That has never diminished. It only increases and increases and increases. The more women that I meet over 50, the more I'm blown away. And now really seek out the company of women over 50, 60, etc. Just really wonderful. I'm just going to check because I heard the little pings going, so just want to make sure that I'm not. No, okay. So Stephanie a message saying no questions. Right, any last words from anyone else? Yeah, Charlemagne.
If I just might add this too, that I think that part of what we're talking about, without necessarily naming it, and I really feel it's important to name, is about when we're talking about our value, there's a value in just who we are versus what we do. To bring it kind of back home to, over the years, we cultivate an intrinsic wisdom, but also a core sense of self, and how that can be radiating quietly or loudly, depending on how we are and what we prefer, into the world. And so then the people who are needing that, seeing it modeled, will gravitate to it. I certainly think about the women who modeled it for me in the past and who model it for me here in the tent, which has been a tremendous source of that. Even if there's not a larger age gap, but just seeing people and hearing people, the tremendous variety that we can bring, I think that's inspiration for people. Knowing, right, that sometimes just being with someone as they merely emanate that quiet strength or that acquired wisdom is supremely mind-altering, life-altering, and exciting to be around because we care about life.
Yeah, wow, I just love that, the beautiful simplicity. That what I'm hearing you say is that it's really enough just to be ourselves. And that does all of it. There's no striving, there's no stress, there's no having to do anything. We just show up in life,
Yeah,
it's fully ourselves, and that does the job. And like, sounds
you had said something earlier.
And have a drink.
Yeah, you had said something earlier about our value, right? And I think that that's one of those words that it inherently has a judgment. We think, and culturally, how we use it, right? But what if we were just valuable because we are? I think we all are. It's not even a what if for me. How do we lean into that? And the beautiful way that several people here have talked about, when we show up as authentically ourselves, the universe aligns, right? Lean into the mystical a little bit here and say, we are supported by the universe, by spirit, by however you want to speak of the spirit of your understanding, the ancestors, whatever it is, that it's there. And that when we trust ourselves, we are creating that flow. And what we need can just be more relevant. It can show up, we can see it more readily. And that grasping and need and fear that a lot of, I think, people, particularly women who might not necessarily have the home, the husbands, the things that you were speaking to, Debra, who might be really in a panic. It's like, when we really open up and invite the world to bring us into the connections with what we need the most, that is best for us, and really be able to sit in it, it shows up, and trust.
On that note, what a perfect place to end today, on that wonderful, succinct bit of wisdom that we have value just because we are. Really, just stunning. Thank you to everybody. Thank you so very much. And I will stop the live stream and stop the recording.